When it came to running on Weir Yard, the model actually did perform really quite well. It really is an eye-catching livery and certainly one that's likely to prove very popular. This model does still hold its own when placed next to Terrier models from other manufacturers. A big hello to you. It really is great to see you, and I do hope that you're well. I'm Jenny Kirk, welcoming you here to Weir Yard, and today I'm going to be sharing with you the latest locomotive that I've added to my fleet. I've actually been a little bit excited about this one. Ever since it was announced by Hornby, it kind of went straight in at number one in my must-have list. It is, of course, their website exclusive, the Isle of Wight Central Terrier, in that really quite eye-catching lined red livery. Now, I must admit that I don't tend to buy a lot of stuff direct from manufacturers. I do like to support local model shops, but in this instance, I was really quite happy to pick one of these up, and I placed my order as soon as they were announced as being in stock. And it arrived this morning, and I'm going to be taking you through a voyage of discovery as we get it out of the box and take a look at this new acquisition for Weir Yard for the first time. Now, if you want to get one of these for yourself, I would advise get in there quick, because the website exclusives and in fact the Terriers in the unusual liveries do tend to be incredibly popular. So just like the Railworks Terrier, which came out a couple of years ago as a website exclusive as well, I don't think these are going to hang around. And for me, this red livery is quite unusual on a locomotive. We're probably more used to blacks, blues and greens, so a red locomotive really does stand out. So come with me and let's take a good close look at just what it is that you get when you buy the Hornby website exclusive Isle of Wight Central Terrier number 10. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCT decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabriek.co.uk. Additional support comes from...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model double O gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest loco.
Before we get into the video, I'd like to ask a huge favour. Don't forget to smash that like button and also consider sharing the video to social media. It's a great way to show other people about the models and the projects that are featured here on the channel. And if you haven't already done so, then do consider subscribing too. And if you ring that notification bell, it's a great way to make sure that you don't miss out on new content as it gets uploaded. You can also find us over on Patreon, or indeed become a channel member for a host of unique benefits, and also to help support the channel so we can keep making the videos that you want to see. We've also got our full merch down below. You find that just underneath the video, so do pick up a great mug, t-shirt, hoodie or more. And we've just launched our range of pin badges as well, which is a great exclusive product for pocket money prices that you can then show your support for the weekly Monday Club live stream. But let's get on with this video and see just how well the exclusive Hornby Terrier performs. It's that time again when Hornby has produced another web exclusive, and previously you might remember one of the web exclusives they did do was the Terrier in this Brighton Works livery, which is really quite eye-catching and certainly was one which I snapped up for my collection, and I think a lot of other people did as well, because it sold out very, very quickly. But Hornby have now turned again to the Terrier model for their latest web exclusive, And this is it. It has finally arrived, and certainly it's one that when it was announced, I was really quite interested in for two different reasons. The first one, I really do love the Terriers, and I've kind of made it a little bit of a submission of mine to actually pick up an awful lot of the different livery variants. I do love this locomotive, and I think it is second only to the Class 08 shunters in terms of the sheer number of different liveries that they carried over their lifetime. Now, in the last batch of Terriers, Hornby produced a train pack in the Isle of Wight Central livery in the lined black with IWC on the tanks, and that really did look good with the triple pack of coaches. But there was another Isle of Wight Railways livery, and it's from the Isle of Wight Central Railway, and it's very, very eye-catching red with lining number 10. And this locomotive, formerly number 69 Peckham under the IoWCR livery, is one which I don't believe has ever been offered ready to run in this livery. I must admit that a couple of years ago now, I actually did a lot of Googling trying to find images of this particular livery, and by and large, you can really only find black and white, but I found one colour picture, and I actually forwarded that along with some of the black and white ones to Simon Kohler and suggested this as a livery option, and whether or not I had any bearing on the appearance of the model in this livery, certainly I'm quite pleased that it has. Now, you have to buy this direct from Hornby through their website. It's £149.99, but it does net free postage. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not too bad, but certainly for a really colourful livery to add to my Terrier collection, I'm quite pleased. It's actually the A1 class rather than the later A1X, which Hornby did also tool for, and we get the potted history of the Terrier class and then a specific history of number 10, formerly number 69 Peckham, and this was one of the Terriers that didn't really last into BR ownership in terms of being a working locomotive. Last really worked in 1936 after it had been absorbed into the Southern Railway, and then it passed to Eastleigh Works where it was used as a source of spare parts to keep other elderly Terriers running, until finally being broken up in 1949, so presumably a British Railways clear out in the early days of stuff that was just cluttering up the works. It comes in the standard Hornby box with the picture on the front of, I think that is an artist rendition rather than a photo of the actual model, but sometimes it is a little bit hard to tell. The slipcase pulls off, and just get that out of the box. And in fact, actually, catalogue number R30356, Isle of Wight Central Railway Class A1 Terrier number 10, and it is marked as DCC ready, and that is a 6-pin decoder interface on these, and I will show you how to DCC fit them towards the final third of this video. Inside the clamshell packaging, we've got a couple of extra pieces here. These appear to be, I'm going to say, vacuum brake standards, but actually some of the railway companies down near the south coast did also use the air brake system too. So we've got an assortment of extra detailed pipework there, but I suspect that that is a little bit of an either or with the tension lock couplings that it comes with as standard. So for most people, it's not going to be something that you're going to be able to fit. Out of the box, the Hornby Terrier has a reasonable weight to it. Certainly when they designed this model, they did try and get a lot of adhesive weight in, bringing the Terrier up to the 21st century in model form. And certainly the previous Hornby model had been very much an amalgam of both A1 and A1X classes, and hadn't succeeded in being specifically either of them. But so it's nice that when Hornby did retool, they made sure that they could do a lot of different detail variants. The bunker on this model is the lower style bunker. We've got that kind of lip at the top, but there's no greedy bars, and that's something on that previous Terrier that I showed you. We've got these extra bars to increase coal capacity, and that's one of the detail options that Hornby were able to produce. The rest of the detail on this is really quite nicely done, although the Hornby model does suffer a little bit from having only one cab front available in the tooling suite, so you can see there's some extra holes in there. It's a bit unfortunate, not too noticeable from the usual viewing distances on a model layout, but I think I did describe them as almost like bullet holes in my original reviews. But the rest of the decoration really is superb. Now, it's very difficult to work out exactly what shades of colour that these very early pre-grouping liveries would have been, and especially ones like this, which was carried by the single locomotive. The colour photographs that are available, they're either colorized from black and white, which can have some degree of inaccuracy, or indeed coloured lithographs from the time, which quite often look like they're not 100% accurate. The only other colour photograph that I was able to find and forward to Simon Kohler was actually one of the preserved terriers, which was masquerading in this livery, I think in the 1980s, but it was just something that I came across that looked very, very interesting. As an A1, we get the kind of wings at the front here. There's almost like an extra plate which adorns the very front of the smoke box and sort of flares out there just in front of the front sandboxes. We get to see underneath the boiler there is a little bit of a parting line there. It's the method that Hornby have chosen for the body to fit to the chassis, and unfortunately this livery does make that a little bit noticeable from some angles. The rest of the fittings are all in place, metal handrails across the top, and some very fine detail parts here on top of the dome, and then the whistle behind as well. Looking to the tops of the tanks, these are finished in black with the water fillers in the centre, and then we've got these air vents at the front, and this just allowed the air to leave as they're filling them quite readily. But more importantly, as the water level in the tanks dropped, it didn't create a vacuum that would have kind of tried to crush the tanks a little bit. So that's what these are on the front. We've got the very typical flared chimney which these locomotives had, and this produced the barking exhaust which gave the class their nickname of Terrier, although the earlier London, Brighton and South Coast Railway crews actually nicknamed them Routers, a router being a name for a pretty similar type of dog. The locomotive carries its Westinghouse air pump there on the side, and we've got a nice open cab, although you can see that glazing bar at the front there, but we do have a gauge printed onto it, which does help to hide it a little bit. A lot of backhead detail, you can see the water gauges, in fact plenty of detail inside this cab. And at the back too, unfortunately we've got that glazing bar at the top, but there's also the handbrake standard, and I do quite like that cream that the cab interior is outfitted in. Toolbox on the back, again fully lined. The lining really is quite crisp and clean, and then we've got the 10 with its drop shadowing and highlights really nicely printed to the bunker sides there. And then on the tank sides we've got the full Isle of Wight Central Railway. It really is an eye-catching livery, and certainly one that's likely to prove very popular. The buffers are not sprung, but they do feature turned brass heads, and we've got the coupling hooks. These are metal. I suspect they're something like an etched brass part, and they are factory fitted. Couplings are slimline tension lock, which fit into some quite unobtrusive pockets here at the back, so you can change them for whatever you like. We've got driven to all 6 wheels from the rear axle, and pickups on all 6 wheels, and looking in there we do seem to have a good pressure on those wiper pickups on the backs of the wheels. The wheels themselves crisp and sharp, and finished in the same colour as the rest of the locomotive, and there is actually a really good colour match between the two, although it doesn't appear that we've got any lining on the wheels, and then the connecting rods are metal and are featured with this, we've got this kind of join in the centre as per the prototype. Brake rigging is again factory fitted, and I'm just going to check there. Yes, you can see as well some of the detail differences between what Hornby's tooling suite can produce. We've actually got different brake blocks, and the sandboxes here at the back of the Brighton Works locomotive are not featured on this Isle of Wight Central one, so that does also appear to be a variant based, I presume, on photographs of the originals. Vacuum standards and metal lamp irons are factory fitted on there. Again, on the front we've got a single lamp iron in the middle on the buffer beam, and then an extra 3 surrounding the smokebox door, and the front face of this has been captured really well with its rather peculiar look with the quite close together spectacles on the front of the cab. The brass finish is printed really quite well, although we get some kind of red just inside the brass inside the front there. The glazing does look reasonably flush front and back. Line of rivets across the back of the cab, although there are some areas, the cab back in particular, where the Hornby model does miss out some of the details seen on the full size. But again, you have to be a real Terrier aficionado to be able to pick this some of the slight deficiencies out, and in all honesty, this model does still hold its own when placed next to Terrier models from other manufacturers. The roof captures the really quite complex shape really well. It's quite prominent riveting across the centre, and certainly we've got a really good representation of this livery on a pretty good model of the Class A1 Terrier. Running on DC, the model was really quite smooth with some good low-speed control out of the box. Now, they do recommend that you run it in for around 20 minutes or so in each direction, but it didn't feel like it really needed that. It was a very smooth mechanism out of the box. When it comes to DCC fitting, I'm going to be using a Trainomatic 6-pin decoder, and I've actually chosen the one with the wires. Now, there is a reason for this, and that's because through experience I've found that the direct plug Trainomatic 6-pin decoder is just a little bit on the long side. We've got a real tightness and lack of space inside this model, so we do have to be a little bit careful on the DCC fit. We've got a screw at the back here, just carefully undo that, and then at the front I'm just going to explore underneath the coupling as a favourite place to hide some of the body fixing screws, and there it is. Carefully undo that. Now, what I would say is be really careful with this front screw. You can see there it's quite a small one, and that goes into the metal of the foot plate, and it's very easy to strip out that thread. Now, with the body off, you can see just how much metal is in this model. They've really packed it in. We've got metal die-cast running plate, tank sides, and a few other places as well, so there's a lot of extra weight hidden away in here, and you can see quite nicely that the sandpipes stay with the body, and you can see there as well the way that the bottom of the boiler barrel just stays with the chassis. Now, inside we've got this quite small motor driving through a gear chain at the back to a gear in the centre of the rear axle. Again, on the chassis we've got a lot of die-cast metal low down that holds a lot of detail, including the springs and such like, and we've also got that space through as well, just like on the prototype. A lot of rivet detail, which is captured well in that die cast. And we're now going to home in on the DCC socket, and you can see here instantly that we are quite pushed on space. The wire and the blanking plate are just kept in a little clip, and if we slide that out, then you can see instantly that there just isn't a lot of room. We don't have any space up into the front for any decoder to protrude into, and that's where the wired 6-pin decoder comes into its own. So when we pulled out the blanking plate, you can see the arrow there, which just tells you where pin 1 is. And on the actual plug, we've also got a little white arrow just to show us where pin 1 is. And pin 1 always matches up with the orange wire. And just in case you're uncertain, on the Tramfabriek wired 6-pin decoder, there's also a little white mark just to make sure that all is well. Now I'm going to clip that back in down here to keep it nice and neat and out of the way, and you can see just how little space you would have for a smaller wired direct decoder, because the plug barely fits into that space. And I'm just going to put a twist on the wire. That just helps to tame all of that. And then I'm going to just fiddle all this in. Now we might need a little bit of Captain tape, but let's just see whether we are going to need it. There really is a lack of space in these. It's quite simply a really tight fit. So I've got some Captain tape, and actually one of the things that I'm going to try and do is to just take this out, and then there's kind of like a plastic clip in here, and you can see that takes up a lot of room. And for this install, I'm actually going to very carefully just remove the end of this. Now you can't just unscrew it, because this also forms part of the piece that just holds the motor in. And if you had access to a much smaller decoder, then you could get away with not having to do this. But this is the decoder which I've chosen because they're relatively inexpensive. Tidy all that together, and this then allows the decoder to sit much lower down. So I've got a little piece of Captain tape on there, and then what I've done is I've twisted up all the wire, and then very carefully force the wire to the front of the boiler. You'll feel it just click and slip really quite readily into place, and then it's simply a case of screwing back in 2 screws. Now it's a little bit trickier a fit, but the advantage of the Tramfabriek wired 6-pin decoders is that they are a really good decoder that's at a really budget price. So if you can fit these in, then you're absolutely laughing in terms of getting great performance at a really good price. So we're able to now take this to the programming track, put in the running number that we want, and then take it out on the main WCR layout. When it came to running on WCR, the model actually did perform really quite well, all things considered. It's a short wheelbase, fairly light locomotive just by virtue of how small it is, although it does feature wiper-style pickups to the backs of all 6 wheels. There isn't a huge amount of space inside, so on the DCC fit I wasn't able to add any kind of a stay alive, but actually it didn't seem to suffer greatly for this, and I was able to run it even down to quite a slow speed over even some of the more temperamental of point work on WCR. Haulage was reasonable and certainly in keeping with what the prototype would be tasked with. I had a short mixed train, and it really had no issue whatsoever on the main running lines of WCR. Although when I tested it with a 5% gradient, it did struggle with anything more than just the four-wheel brake coach, although this still had quite a pleasing air about it, and in this livery it would certainly be a great short train to add to either a small branch line layout or indeed to a much larger layout as part of the overall scene of different types of trains coming and going. Whilst there might not be that many people who model the Isle of Wight railways, the colourful and interesting eclectic mix of locomotives that ran there certainly have proven very popular, and Rule 1 obviously applies, and definitely this is a locomotive which will find a ready home in a huge variety of collections. I have found that I've become a little bit of a collector of terriers, and that's part of the beauty and charm of these locomotives, that no matter what you actually model, the sheer variety of colourful liveries that these carried does mean that they've got that peculiar charm about them that really does lend itself to display cabinets or that kind of late evening running session where all of the modern image or rail blue locomotives get set to one side and these little beauties get to sting the rails with the bark of their Terrier exhaust. For me, at last count, I've got 13 of the new tooled varieties, and it's become a little bit of an obsession trying to pick up more and more. And certainly there are liveries that are available which I don't have in my collection, including the IWC Black and the Southern Railway versions, but that is definitely something that I will rectify in the future. When it comes to price, as said before, Hornby are offering these as a website exclusive at £149.99. In the UK, that attracts free economy postage. Now, that is a little bit more expensive than when these terriers first appeared, and certainly if you hunt around, you can get some of the earlier batches from exactly the same tooling down to even as little as £80 a locomotive if you're not too picky about the livery variant. So it does seem to have gone up a little bit in price, despite one assumes the tooling having been amortized over the lifetime of the models that have so far been produced. There still are quite a few different variants that could be put out there, and the New Haven Harbour Company variant is one which I do hope that Hornby might consider for a future release, and also some of the more military railways like the Shropshire and Montgomeryshire did have a number of these, or the Edge Hill Light Railway. Certainly there's still plenty of scope for releasing new models. Not to mention the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway ochre livery, often referred to as improved engine green, is one that really does look fabulous, and I really do look forward to more releases of the different identities of the terriers in that livery as well. We turn now to the scores, and first up is build quality, and actually it is pretty well put together. There's no detail that came free with the handling, and there's certainly a lot of separately applied parts which have been put together really well. There's no signs of too much glue having been used or indeed too little glue, and what you get here does seem to fit together quite well. The only area which is a little bit noticeable, particularly on some of the livery variants, is that parting line just down there in the bottom 20% of the boiler, and sometimes that does feel like it doesn't quite fit together as well as it should. But other than that, the rest of the build is pretty reasonable, and I'm going to give this a 9.1. On running quality, this model did perform better than expected on wear yard, taking in all of the complex point work, including double slips, scissor crossings, and the twists and turns. It got round radius 1 with no issues whatsoever, and the couplings were able to swivel enough that there was no sign of anything being pulled off the track. Whilst there isn't enough space inside for a DCC fit, including a stay alive, unless you're prepared to do a little bit of surgery, the model did seem to cope quite well, and all in all, I'm going to give it a 9.2. On DCC fitting and innovation, well, innovation-wise, it is nice to see that Hornby have tooled up for a number of different detail variants. The Terriers did have a lot of changes throughout their lives, the biggest being the change from A1 to A1X, but there's a lot of other subtle detail differences, and Hornby have taken account of pretty much most of these in the tooling suite, which is good to see. One of the areas, though, which does seem to be a little bit retrograde is that they're using a single cab front part from the tooling suite, and this caters for both A1 and A1X. With the A1X variety, it doesn't matter because all these holes are filled, but when built into an A1 version, you can see that there are just a few holes visible there, which are for the alternative detail parts, and that, I suppose, is the one thing that I can point to as being just a little bit detrimental. DCC fitting is really tight, and I mean really tight. You have to choose your 6-pin decoder with a degree of care. Now, the Trainer-matic wired 6-pin decoder will fit, as I demonstrated, but there isn't any real space left over for a stay-alive fitment or indeed a sound fitting unless you want to carry out a little bit of surgery on your model, which may be beyond the reach of the more novice of railway modelers. So I'm going to give this a 7.0. On accuracy and quality of finish, well, this is definitely a major improvement over the previously tooled Hornby Terrier, and this really is a great model which does look to be something that will be welcomed in the range for many years to come. The fact that Hornby have tooled up for the different detail variances means no longer do we have that weird hybrid between A1 and A1X with a hodgepodge of detail which doesn't really fit any particular member of the class. Instead, we've got detail which is specific to the particular class members, and that is really great to see. So all in all, I'm going to give this an 8.0. On value for money, currently this particular livery is a website exclusive from Hornby and can be found on the Hornby website shop. That means that the price you see is the price you pay. There's no discounting in place here, and it's at the price of £149.99. That does feel to be quite a lot more than when these models first appeared on the model shop shelves. And whilst manufacturing costs are going up quite considerably, I would have hoped that the amortization of the tooling might have helped to keep any rises down. That said, it really is a beautiful, wonderful model, and it's great to see that Hornby have brought to the market some of these slightly more obscure Isle of Wight railway liveries that I've never seen in ready-to-run before. So I'm going to give this a 7.4. And that gives us an overall score of 40.7. It really is a lovely locomotive, and for any self-confessed fan of the Terriers, this is a must-have. It's likely that it will sell out just like the Brighton Works Terrier variant that was a website exclusive before it did, so if this is a must-have livery, then you need to get it ordered now or be at risk of missing out. Well, I hope you really did enjoy that look at the website exclusive Terrier from Hornby. Certainly really is an eye-catching livery on the model, and for me, I love the Terriers. It's something that I found myself collecting as new colourful liveries have come out, and I think, as I said during the video, at the last count we were looking at 13 in my collection, and there's still plenty more that I think I'm going to be picking up. But I really like this. Red is an eye-catching livery. I don't think any of the Terriers have been released in this kind of a livery before. Certainly we've had plenty of greens and blues and blacks and that really quite eye-catching yellow ochre, but never a red livery before. They're bound to prove popular, and if you really do want one of the locomotives that you've seen today, then get it ordered quickly, because it's bound to sell out quite quickly. That's my guess on the matter. But I'd love to hear from you in the comments section down below. Do you also collect Terriers? Is there a particular livery perhaps, or identity that's not been offered yet that you would really love to see? Leave a comment down below and I'd love to hear from you. Also, please like, share and subscribe. You can check us us out over on Patreon, or indeed become a member of the channel. And do remember to be with us on Monday from 7 p.m. UK time for the Monday Club live stream. It's your online model railway club, and we always love to have your company there where you can chat with fellow like-minded modelers as the stream goes on, plus keep up to date with all the news and views in the model railway world. But for now, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself. Happy modelling, bye for now. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at Tramfabriek.co.uk. Additional support is provided by...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model double O gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest logo.
I'd like to thank everybody over on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to our Patreon heroes. Without you guys over on Patreon, we really wouldn't be able to keep making the video content that you see on this channel. And don't forget that you can also head on over to patreon.com/JenniferKirk and check out the different tiers of rewards. Thank you so much. You are absolute legends.